Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the FP&A Trends webinar that today is devoted to the subject how to embrace FP&A transformation and what are the key steps to consider. I'm your facilitator today, and my name is Larissa Malnichuk. I'm Managing Director and founder of FP&A Trends Group and International FP&A Board. Today we have a registration from more than 550 practitioners from over 64 countries around the globe. And so it's truly an international webinar. And the main mission of our webinars, obviously, to share with you the latest trends and developments in modern financial planning and analysis. Just a quick update on the subject, just a quick update on the agenda. So today we will talk about how to use FP&A maturity model in order to create your roadmap to transformation. Then it would be a presentation on practitioner view on FP&A transformation in terms of what is the diagnostics and how to assess the process and how to create the roadmap. And then the next subject is how technology can help to enhance FP&A transformation. Of course, conclusions and recommendations and Q&A session at the end. Once again, we have a very international panel that joining us from Switzerland and from the US today. I'm based in London, in the UK, and I would like to ask Vignesh and Larry to join us and to switch on the camera and microphone. Hello, hi Larry, Vignesh.
Hi, Larissa. Happy to be here.
Fantastic. Vignesh, we don't see you on the camera. If you can switch on the camera, please. Yeah. And yes. I will start very quick introductions right now. Yeah. So we have Vignesh Dumansu, who is a CFO Flex at Switzerland. Vignesh is a member of our Swiss FP&A board. Also, he is a member of our Artificial Intelligence Machine Learning Committee. At the moment, he's responsible for Swiss operation in his company, but company operates in more than 30 countries. And in his organization, Vignesh introduced the leading stage with using of artificial intelligence, machine learning, predictive and prescriptive. Vignesh, nice to see you finally. So Vignesh previously worked in a number of leading organizations, not only in Switzerland, but in other countries. And his special area of interest and passion is analytical transformation, how to use artificial intelligence in finance and strategic finance as well. Today, Vignesh will share his balanced practitioner view on analytical transformation, FP&A transformation. Vignesh, you are welcome. We are glad to see you here.
Thank you, Larissa. Thanks for having me.
Welcome. The next panelist here is Larry Servan, who is a regional director and thought leader at Board International. So you know Larry from his book, a very well-known book, and also from a number of research papers and white papers. So world recognized corporate performance management thought leader, and Larry presented at some of our webinars before, and today Larry is going to present about how technology can help to transform FP&A. What I would like to say that Larry's articles were featured at New York Times and the Harvard Business Review, and also a Journal of Corporate Accounting and Finance. And his book, which is called Value of Planning, the New Approach to Building Value Every Day. It earned endorsement of the CEO of Pfizer, CFO of Walmart, and many others. Previously, also Larry he's a founder and former CEO of the company Accelerant, which is the leading CPM software organization. So Larry is going to present today the view of the technology analytics thought leader. Larry, so nice to see you here as well.
Yeah, very happy to be here.
Very quick introduction of my background. So I'm based in the UK and I'm senior qualified accountant. I'm a certified FP&A professional. In my practitioner career, I was leading FP&A organizations in Europe, also globally, for leading companies. But for the last 7 years, I'm involved in my own company, and also I'm traveling the world with FP&A Trends project. Now, our panelists, you can switch off your cameras because I have just a few slides for the update. So this is my company, International FP&A Trends Group. International FP&A Board is part of this. So 27 cities, 16 countries, 4 continents at the moment. This is where we have our face-to-face chapters. But what is new, actually? Just recently, looking at the demand, we created the best practice workshops and consultancy services. Just a few words about this webinar. 1 hour, you will have an interactive Q&A session, so you can ask your questions via the chat box, and you can start asking questions as soon as the first presentation starts. Presentations are available right now in handouts, but also you will receive the recording of this session and also the copy of presentation as well within 2 days after the finish of this webinar. And another thing, it's important for us to learn how we can improve this webinar. So the survey after we finish the webinar, if you can stay and if you can feel it, it would be fantastic. Before we start, thank you so much to our technology sponsor for today, Board International, the company that is leading technology company in the area of corporate performance management and flexible FP&A. Just a few slides from my side. I really love this quote from Albert Einstein. We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. This is such a good quote to describe everything what is happening in the world of FP&A. Generally speaking, exactly 1 year ago, we found ourselves with a lot of broken, unrealistic forecasts and dead budgets. And we knew about this transformation for some time. But at the moment, if we quickly describe what is happening in the area of FP&A, it's definitely moving from traditional to, we call this extended or best in class or best practice FP&A. So we are moving from schedule to on-demand planning. We are moving from accounting to flexible time. We are moving from one to multiple futures, and we are moving from finance to entire company. This is the model that I would like to introduce you to this model. FP&A Maturity model. At first, it was created in London, and then traveling the world, we adjusted this with our members and practitioners at our 27 chapters. So the idea is, yes, transformation project, transformation journey is different for each organization, but there are some features that are common and the trends are global. So with help of this model, and I'm sure that many of you already seen this in our previous webinars and also on our website, you can find out where you are and you can create the steps that are suitable for your company. This is already probably the version of number 10 of this model, and right now we are doing the research project. We are interviewing leading organizations and also data scientists and academics around this model, and we are adjusting this, and the research paper would be issued somewhere in the middle of June, so please stay alert. But just to update you on where we should be in order for us to be quick, flexible, and dynamic, and to place scenario practically in real time at different level of the organization collaboratively. So obviously it's about culture of your company that should allow for change. It's about those multidisciplinary skills, teams in your company. FP&A, it's not just accounting, it's much more. It's about analytics, it's about process that should be on demand, very flexible, agile. It's about three-way modeling, driver-based modeling, leading analytical drivers using prescriptive and predictive for those cases where human intelligence is not enough. And of course, it's multi-dimensional scenario planning, so-called decision-making machine, how we call this now. And of course, technology that allows integration, flexible collaboration, self-service, automated systems, and so on and so forth. And of course, the next level of FP&A business partnering. This is a good timing to look at the practitioner view on transformation. Vignesh, you implemented a number of transformational projects. The latest one is quite amazing, actually. It's with artificial intelligence and machine learning, a lot of automation. And we are interested today to hear about the lessons that you learned and examples and what you can recommend. The stage is yours. You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Larissa, and thanks for having me. So let's go into the presentation and let me share my thoughts with you today. So let's start with just looking at the FP&A as a whole. So the purpose of this slide is just to take a step back and to basically position FP&A in its complexity, more or less, and the type of activities it tries to cover. So, you know, the role of FP&A has not changed so much. We talked today about transformation, so I'd like to talk about what stayed and what changed and how we can adapt ourselves to be much better attuned to what we want to achieve. What did not change is the fact that it's a complex environment. You see that here, FP&A is involved in measuring the activities of the organization, be it manufacturing or service-oriented. It's influenced by internal processes, what Larissa mentioned earlier. You have people, process, and technologies. You have still the same interactions with external factors, customers, suppliers. You have, based on the industry you are in, either FDA regulated or other regulatory bodies, technologies around that. And FP&A is trying to cover all that, and that has not changed so much. What has not changed either is FP&A is very much involved and is measured upon an important deliverable, which is the forecasting accuracy. So to be able to predict future, so to say, and to be able to deliver results based on what we predict is a tall tasking, but that's still very much relevant. FP&A is also tasked about improving the financial health of an organization, and on the other side, to strike a balance between financial health, but also to support growth, and then to move into different scenarios and support insightful decisions in order to nurture growth. So if we move about, if we try to take a step, see what has changed now, or what are the new factors that came in, we definitely see more complexities. We see more volatility. To stay in phase with what we see now, a vaccine for COVID, for example, probably requires something like 3,000 materials sourced out of 30 countries and so forth. So you have a much greater supply chain complexity. We have data all over the place. The ecosystems have also evolved and changed. So all of this actually requires our FP&A organization also from a practitioner standpoint to adapt in order to still deliver the objectives that we are assigned to. So we will see that in the next slide. So if we just check that one. So this is about the diagnostic step. So it's to link back to what you heard earlier, what you heard Larissa mention about your maturity model. Before moving into any transformation journey, I would try to understand where my organization is. And in my previous organizations, I can think of two elements. I would say one is the sales forecasting. So we had situations where we had actually a tool that used statistical methods which would automatically predict a certain volume level, a certain activity level for the future. And you could come in and you could add market intelligence, for example, to adapt or change the top line. The top line forecast is one of the most complex tasks, and also one of those activities which define the deployment of other resources. So that's an important activity. So this model, I mean, it helps you to see where you are, basically. Is it more traditional? Is it more system oriented? Is it looking at the past, or is it a combination of past and future? Is it silo, or is it better integrated? Because again, we can think of that aspect as well, that FP&A needs to be actually well integrated into the other areas, be it operations or any other functional area. So we can look at FP&A in three aspects, basically, if we use this model. One is the breadth. So whether this is an internal type of information, the FP&A, what I just mentioned, or is it a combination of an internal and external? We can also look at it at its depth. So if we take the example of assessing profitability of a unit, you might be able to assess it at the unit level, but we might have to go more and more in what we call microsurgeries. Means you need to deep dive and be able to look at a specific customer category or a specific product line, or even below a product line. Now, the deeper you go, the more complex it becomes, because we enter into areas of allocations, fixed cost allocations, and so forth. So there should be a way to keep it simple and be able to still get that information. And finally, you have the information relating to data. Is the data from yesterday, or is the data as current as possible? Larissa mentioned about the decision-making machines. The more your data is up to date, and the more accurate are the decisions. So this is just to give a certain flavor of all the things that FP&A can actually do, or what are its main activities. So if we then move to the next one, let's now look a little bit in the transformation. So we've seen now the scope of FP&A, its objectives, what's being asked to us as practitioners. You can try to spot yourself where you are in this journey and see the main requirements of FP&A. So an organization that needs to go deep, that's able to zoom in, zoom out, integrate information, not only finance, also other elements of the organization, and start to more and more integrate external information. So that's what we are trying to go at. So how do we transform from here? So we try to define it in 4 simple steps. The first one for me, which would be important, is basically to go back to the strategic plan. That strategic plan is basically the blueprint, I mean, that shows where the organization is heading in for the next 5 or 6 years. And that should basically be, the reference point from where you basically define the customer value proposition and how we are going to organize and redeploy resources. Then besides that, you have to then come in and define an integrated and cohesive process so that we get a goal congruence. So getting a top line improvement is not only a finance or a sales activity. It's basically a consequence, and it has to go into goals for across the organizations, from procurement into production, into quality, into sales and finance. So there needs to be a goal congruence, and FP&A will support it, and to support its alignment and track it. Then, of course, there is the technological roadmap. So it's about the type of systems we have. So it can be very simple systems, what Larissa mentioned earlier, what probably you'll hear from Larry later on. As Excel, it can be a bit more sophisticated, could be integrated, but basically it should serve the purpose. So it should through the budget, the skills that you have in your environment, it should be adapted to the goals that we are trying to achieve. And last but not least, of course, people satisfaction, empowerment, and training our people and our organization to use those systems, those processes, in order to move more and more from a number crunching standpoint to an interpretive standpoint, and support the business in delivering those insights and taking interesting decisions, that's where we are heading into. So basically, these are the main areas. So if we try to look at what could be in the next slide, up to which level we could transform, basically what we've seen so far is that you should be able to have a mixture in this transformation. So there is still a certain level of command and control where you control all your P&L lines with pretty much little room for innovation, very much increasing on the reporting side. And then you have scenario type of approaches, which give some indications, and then within those indication and metrics allow a couple of free KOIs or KPIs to be generated. And then you have a fully autonomous self-assessment mode where people can go and select the KOIs and KPIs and constitute their own dashboards or scorecards. So if I'm in operations, I might want to monitor a scrap rate of a specific product line more than another one for that week, for example. So we need to balance those things and make sure that, you know, that provides also more innovation. And we'll see it in the next slide, because what we want to achieve is not only reporting, but we want to achieve a certain level of results. So if we go to the future of FP&A, basically, so FP&A is becoming more and more something which is strategic oriented and business partnership oriented. The other section, which is a specialized FP&A or expert type of FP&A role, is going to be more and more automized through artificial intelligence or automations and so forth. What is more and more required is the interpretation of the data, and then being able, and I think Larry will mention it later, to identify those levers that we can push and pull in order to influence the performance or the results of the organization. And I would say that that's an important element to look at, because we need to be able to achieve the goal, and we will see it in the next slide. Basically, we have actually, the FP&A is moving from a number crunching, reporting based approach to really a strategic approach. A strategic in that sense that it's coordinating all the efforts of the organization, and then it's also supporting the execution. So it's not only about analyzing results and variances, but it's basically to understand which levers can be pushed or pulled to influence on the result and go across the steps and monitor those steps, and if needed, provide some course corrections or provide some tactical adjustments to still be on track and to still deliver those results. And then once the results are delivered, it's basically to analyze those results, review them, and see how they can be improved and reviewed. So that's where we think that the FP&A is actually moving from a traditional reporting type of orientation into a more business partner and versus strategic ally for the organization. And independent of what the process, the technology levels are, this transformation can still be done and should be done in order to deliver a superior performance of the organization. So with that, Larissa, I would be open for any questions.
Vignesh, thank you so much. What a great overview of practitioner steps for transformation of FP&A. I would like to invite Larry to join the discussion and to give your subject matter, Larry, on Vignesh's point of view, please.
Well, first of all, I thought that was a great presentation. There's an awful lot there that Vignesh covered. I think, you know, we could have devoted 2 hours to it. There's a lot of rich content there. But a couple of things I pulled out of it. One is the top line demand planning, and how in most organizations that actually drives a significant portion of the entire P&L. So paying really close attention to that, using predictive, maybe in conjunction with boots on the ground knowledge from sales and marketing people. You talked about microsurgery. I really like that term. I think I'm going to be borrowing it, where you might have these big sort of macro decisions that executives are making, but if you're able to get down to that product P&L, even SKU P&L, then you can start making really smart, intelligent microsurgery decisions. I thought that was great. You used the term zoom in and zoom out. I thought that was excellent as well. And sometimes that's exactly what you need. You see something happening at a high level, and you really want to be able to zoom in and understand, well, what's happening in the business. And sometimes that's not just a straight path. It's a little bit of a zigzag, to get to the answer that you want. And then the last thing I wrote down was the importance of integrating data from multiple systems. Because of course, as finance people, we're very focused on the financials, but the financial results are really driven by what's happened in the operations. So having all that data come in so that you can really do some robust analysis and provide real decision support. But I just thought it was a great presentation. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Larry.
Thank you so much, Larry. Absolutely amazing to see the practitioner view, but practical insights from the point of view of technology transformation. Larry, it would be your part, but before we start, I would like to say that there are a lot of questions how we should start, what we can use. What are the ways to attempt transformation? Should it be a big bang approach or should it be a small step approach? And what I would like to say that from our experience, it's all working fine. The main thing to start. Larry today will share with us 3 amazing case studies where company definitely moved to the next level of transformative FP&A. Larry, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. And Larissa, let's move to the first slide. So we thought what would be helpful to help sort of visualize success is, when we're talking about that leading stage, that leading state, to have a sense of, well, how did some other companies get there? So we thought providing these 3 mini case studies might be helpful. Next slide, please. So Vignesh had talked a lot about the process side and the people side, touched a little bit on technology. Here we kind of want to do a focus on how do these companies that are at the leading state, what are some of the ways that they're really leveraging technology? So the first way is really facilitating scenario management. Now, I'm going to be talking about that in just a minute when we talk about Coca-Cola. But there's a difference between scenario planning or even scenario forecasting and true scenario management. And again, we're going to be providing an example of that with Coca-Cola. Secondly, they're really integrating operational and financial planning. And really, when you stop and think about it, the financial results are the results of what's happened in the operations. And, sometimes I've seen companies put the cart before the horse. They're so focused on the financial forecast that they, almost forget or gloss over, well, wait a minute, what's happening in the operations to actually get us there to that forecast. But these leading companies have really fully integrated operational planning with financial planning. They're using technology to enable driver-based planning. And again, we've got kind of a mini case study on that. And there are a lot of payoffs to doing driver-based planning, not just on the efficiency side, but how the drivers can be used to better manage the business. Next point, they've really fully integrated business planning. So for these organizations, it's not just financial planning, it's marketing planning, it's promotion planning, it's operational planning, it's production planning, it's supply chain planning. and not in separate silos where somebody's going to have to send information or data from one silo to another, but really fully integrated FP&A. They're looking at, as Vignesh said, profitability analysis at a product level, or sometimes even down to an SKU level. Now, that usually does require some pretty sophisticated algorithms for allocations. There's a company that we were working with a short while ago that had actually developed 30 flavors of allocations, many with 3 or 4 steps to them. Very difficult to do in Excel, but actually easy to automate once you've got the right allocations. And then finally, another point that Vignesh mentioned, bringing predictive to demand planning. We're going to be talking about that when we talk about Puma. Next slide, please. So, so I just want to read this quote from John Murphy, who's the Chief Financial Officer of the Coca-Cola Company. This is the global entity, Coca-Cola. And he was at a roundtable event at MIT recently, and I really thought this quote was just spot on. He said, I've become less of a fan of the term scenario planning in the last 9 months. And what he was talking about there obviously was COVID. He said, because I've discovered in our case, it tends to be an exercise in sounding intelligent about the future. Now, that's really transparency to the nth degree. He's really opening up there. He said, I think of it more as scenario management than scenario planning. In that regard, we very much sharpened our approach to having plan B, plan C, plan D available and implementable fairly quickly. So it's not just running models, well, you know, if this happens, what's the impact on the P&L? If that happens, what's the impact on the P&L? But it's really thinking through, well, wait a minute, if that happens, just what the heck are we going to do about it, right? And then having those plans in place and not creating, you know, 1,047 scenarios, which is very tempting to do, but really focusing on the key risks and key opportunities. So one way that they've, you know, kind of taken advantage of this from a technology perspective, if we can move ahead to the next slide, is actually thinking through what are, you know, some key initiatives or projects that we'll have. If we can go to the next slide, please. There we go. So, you know, they might be thinking, well, you know, if we launch this new product, if we open up this this new warehouse, if we run these, you know, certain promotional campaigns, you know, if we need to downsize, and they've sort of, you know, put a box around these things and, you know, called them initiatives or projects. And they've identified what the impact is going to be on the P&L from, you know, revenue and cost perspective, bottom line perspective. So what they're able to do then is say, okay, well, under scenario 1, which of these projects or initiatives is going to be germane or relevant? Check the box. You know, it's going to be included. Okay, moving on to the next scenario. You know, if this happens, you know, what are we going to put in place? So, you know, let's check the boxes for those initiatives and projects. Now, you know, is this a complete answer? No, but the thing is, it gets people really thinking beyond, well, if this one thing changes in our model, what's the P&L impact? To, well, wait a minute, how are we going to respond to it from an operational perspective? Now, we tried to do, you know, something like this at Pepsi, which is where I was a manager for FP&A in Excel, and I'll tell you, it quickly gets out of hand, you know, very quickly. But if you can kind of organize it this way, it makes it much easier to do. Next slide, please. So we want to talk a little bit about driver-based planning and as it ties into scenario management. Now, Coca-Cola European Partners is actually the largest bottling operation in the Coke worldwide system. They've got more than 300 million consumers, close to 25,000 employees. It's an enormous operation. But what they've built is really straight through fully integrated planning and budgeting. So they can go from manufacturing to warehouse to logistics, right down to the store operations. And they built a pretty elaborate driver-based model. So, it accounts for things like, what is the plant capacity? What's the, bill of materials for certain products? Where are those materials housed? What's the warehouse capacity, et cetera? So that when they do their demand planning, they're able to run it through this model and say, well, we're going to need to produce in these plants. It might mean overtime, which is this impact on the P&L. It might mean that we need staff augmentation, which is this, impact on the P&L. And that's just for production planning. They do the same thing for warehousing, the same thing for supply chain. So it's really straight through processing. And again, they're able to run scenarios. One hidden benefit to this, and there's a very obvious one in terms of planning and forecasting, but one hidden benefit is the level of variance analysis and the real business intelligence now from variance analysis is so much further beyond what it would be without driver-based planning. What do I mean by that? So they're not just able to take a look and say, well, we've got a variance and it's because we sold more, we sold less. They can say, well, we expected this productivity improvement, which would have led to this improvement in cost of goods sold. However, the project to do that's been a little bit delayed, so we haven't been able to get quite that productivity improvement. So we're seeing some improvement in cost of goods sold, but not entirely what we thought. That is so much more intelligent, so much more in-depth, so much more valuable to management than, we sold more or less than what we thought. And they're able to do that because they really do have driver-based planning. Next slide, please. So the last mini case study we'd like to talk about is Puma. So Puma's really leveraged this whole idea of FP&A and straight through integrated business planning, from demand planning through manufacturing, warehousing, logistics, marketing, merchandise planning, everything straight through. So how have they been able to take advantage of this from a business perspective? So here's just one example, but it's one I happen to like. So Puma, like a lot of other fashion companies, that's kind of what sneaker companies are these days, use influencers. And this is one, Pamela Reif. And what they noticed on a particular Instagram post was that it was completely blowing up and people were just asking about the sneakers that she was wearing. So, Puma recognized we could have a really big spike in this sneaker. So question, how do we really take advantage of it? Because, fashion moves very quickly. We've got to take advantage of it right now. So because they have fully integrated planning, they knew what stores were most likely to see the peak. They knew exactly what raw materials they needed, where they needed to purchase them from, what type of lead time they needed, where they were going to be produced, how they were going to be shipped to the stores. And so they were quickly able to get the right sneakers in the right stores at the right time because they had straight through processing. And that's really what I call agile planning. That one event alone more than paid for their investment. And so I know we're kind of hit my time here. If we can move to the last slide. I think that the takeaway here is, yes, these companies are doing some really pretty sophisticated, some pretty neat stuff that is really, most importantly, providing value to the business and really paying off for the business. But keep in mind, they had to start somewhere, right? So you might be, at the very beginning, you might be thinking we're really at that developing state, but these companies were at one point in the developing state as well. So hopefully today I've provided a little bit of inspiration for you. So with that, Larissa, I will throw it back to you.
Larry, thank you so much for your excellent presentation. Great examples, and great examples how company can move this maturity model, maturity ladders. I would like to ask Vignesh to switch on the camera and to give your quick commentaries, please.
Yes, absolutely. Amazing presentation, Larry, and I found it extremely interesting and insightful. A couple of takeaways for me. I mean, looking at, I really liked the idea, of as you talked about scenario management. So basically going from plan A, plan B, plan C, because very, concretely what it means is that, let's say we're reducing top line or we're increasing top line. It's not just done behind an Excel. I mean, we need to involve procurement, who needs to buy less, otherwise inventory goes up. We have issues with working capital. We need to reorganize our workforce. We need to organize our capacity. So it's a whole bunch of things that we have to orchestrate, and I think that fits in very well with this plan A, plan B, plan C approach. So everyone knows in which circumstance they are evolving and what they have to do in order to fit the bigger goal and the bigger picture. Found that really interesting. And then definitely, I think your example about predictive demand just shows how well we can use technology to basically support all these efforts in establishing some lines, because that's definitely something which is very insightful. And I really liked also the idea, and there was also a bit of very interesting insights for me about the deployment and the redeployment of the resources. So as soon as you have an information that comes out to you, sometimes we see that organizations are very slow to move, right? So by the time you move, I mean, the opportunity is gone. So how fast, I mean, for finance leadership and executive leadership, how fast can we move and seize opportunities, go back, go front? That agility that you describe is absolutely great. So I really enjoyed it. Great presentation. Thanks, Larry.
Thank you, Vignesh.
Thank you so much, Vignesh, for your commentary. Again, great presentation, Larry. I would like to remind our participants that please continue to send your questions. We already have a lot of questions, but even if we don't have enough time to answer all of them, we will get back to you with emails. As a key takeaway, I would like just remind to everyone about these 9 steps of analytical transformation. Again, it was transformed, it was developed by International FP&A Board. Those are the logical steps. It doesn't mean that they should be in this order, but those are really important 9 aspects to take into consideration for your analytical transformation. So, of course, analytical culture is important. Remember about data quality. Collaboration during this process. It shouldn't be too crowded, but it should be balanced. Identify key drivers, both internal and external. Create driver-based model. Use predictive, prescriptive for those where human intelligence is not enough. Implement integrative system. Automate any routine you can. And of course, do the scenario planning and make decisions. And this is the circle. It's never-ending process. The improvement is there. So I would like to ask our panelists to prepare for Q&A session. We have a lot of them, and let me distribute some of the questions to you. Vignesh, the first question is to you.
Yep.
The question is around the barrier. It's well known that there is a very big gap at the moment between top management expectations and those doers, so people who are at mid-level, those that implement this. So what would be your practitioner recommendation, how we can really avoid this during the transformation process?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's really about, I would say, communicating what can be achieved on the ground versus what the expectations are. I think I referred to the strategic plan, which basically is generally done at a leadership level or at a corporate level. I mean, that's one area where you can adjust those expectations. Another area is basically also to communicate more frequently and explain better, you know, what you are about and what's your, because we are all leaders in our own terms. I mean, you have your own activity and you best know what you are doing. So for sure you're empowered within the scope of what you do to provide your best inputs and insights. And by showing that and showing that you really have that in control, definitely you can, and I think the management and senior leadership will be influenced, because it's really by looking at the facts and the data as they are that you can take a decision. It's not you know, dreaming about something that doesn't exist that we are going to make progress. So definitely I would say open communication and share insights. That would be my proposal.
Vignesh, thank you so much for your reply. Larry, you are the next. Do you see the relevance of predictive analytics relevant to particular industries rather than common to all industries? What would be your point, Larry?
So I think that's a really good question. I would be hard pressed to think of an industry that couldn't benefit from predictive analytics, right? But I think one important point that is often overlooked is predictive analytics can sometimes be seen as, yeah, this is it. Once we have this, you know, this application, you know, it's going to tell us, it's going to be a complete crystal ball what the future is. You know, I really believe in augmenting that with what you're able to get from your sales and marketing people who, you know, hopefully their boots on the ground, they might understand kind of what's happening at a particular customer that might influence sales, for example, you know, in a way that, you know, a predictive model just isn't going to account for, because it doesn't know, let's say that customer went bankrupt, right? So, you know, augmenting the predictive with that human intelligence, you know, I think is really the optimal answer. And one thing that a lot of our clients will do is at the end of the month or end of the quarter, they'll go back and do kind of a post-mortem and say, okay, this is what actually happened. This is what the predictive model said. This is what our sales and marketing people said. And, you know, which came close. And over time, you know, these things really do converge. But like I said at the top, it's very hard for me to imagine an industry that somehow couldn't benefit from predictive analytics. If somebody has thought of one, great. I'd love to hear it, but certainly I think most could.
Thank you so much, Larry. The next question is to you, Vignesh.
Yes.
Very interesting question about what you did during COVID-19 crisis. So what are the key points that you have implemented during COVID-19 crisis, and what was the roadmap adopted in your organization in order to sustain the operational activity and also go back to normal later on?
Yes, very, very interesting question. Absolutely. So, you know, what we did is, and I think it probably most organizations did that, is to first of all assess the impact of your top line and your activities. You know, because the economy has been down in a very different ways. Some industries were up, like medical, and some others like transportation were a bit down. So it really depends where you are. So the first thing that we did is really assess our level of activity, and based on that, I think there was an effort to readjust our resources and our capacity so that we don't run in over capacity during that time. What was also done, and I think that's very important, because we are all in finance, but security and safety of our people is the ultimate or the most important goal. So we definitely put measures in place as well to make sure that which was, by the way, also an economical reason, because having healthy people would help you move ahead. So all steps to basically secure and organize safe operations, and then look at it, you know, in a longer term with scenarios. Exactly. So how fast this will end, and what are the approaches that we could take. So this is what we did. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Vignesh. And now the last question, due to time, to you, Larry, a very quick question. But I would like to encourage people to send your questions. We will have time to answer after the meeting. Larry, how we can move away from this traditional process of using Excel for planning? How we can, what we can do about this? We can see that more than 50% of people still use it for planning.
Yep, and I am aware of the time, so I'll answer that one briefly. And my general advice is actually borrowed from some friends in Silicon Valley, and they talk about two things: the minimal viable product and the whole product concept. What those two things are, the minimal viable product is, you know, for a company in this context, what's the burning platform? What do you absolutely need to address? What is the top priority, right? And having clarity on that. So rather than try to do everything all at once, really focus on what do we really need now? Is it a budget system? Is it an executive dashboard? Is it predictive analytics? What is the thing that we really need, you know, right now? But, and this is a very important but, keep in mind, where do we ultimately want to be, right? So we saw, you know, Puma, we saw Coca-Cola, we saw, you know, AstraZeneca. You know, one thing that they have in common is they've got straight through fully integrated business planning. Maybe that's your vision, maybe you've got a different vision. But you really want to keep in mind, you know, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, you know, what is our vision? What do we ultimately want? And make sure that whatever step you're taking forward addresses both that burning platform, what we need done right now, but with an eye toward where we want to be in the future. Because where you don't want to wind up is with, you know, 18 different systems that don't talk to each other, because nobody really thought about, gee, at some point we're going to need all this, right? So that's my advice. I think we've gone 2 minutes over.
It's okay, not a problem. A lot of interesting questions, but it was the last one due to the timing. Please continue to send your questions. All of them would be answered after the meeting. With this, I would like to say thank you so much to Vignesh and Larry. Thank you so much for answering these questions. Just a few slides before we close the meeting. I would like to remind everyone that we are about to close this 2021 FP&A Empowerment Survey. The page is here, so if you can take part, you will receive a very interactive report, analytical report, and also the white paper as well if you participate. And also we are going to talk about AI ML revenue planning with some amazing examples from a CFO of Microsoft and a senior vice president from Emirates Airline. And of course, if you can join us for the webinar about management of uncertainty with predictive analytics. All the links are here in your presentation. And finally, before we close for today, I would like to say thank you so much to our panelists. It was a fantastic meeting. It was a pleasure to collaborate with you. And thank you so much for sharing with us your experience. Thank you so much, Larry. Thank you so much, Vignesh. I also would like to say thank you so much to our sponsor, Boat International. Thank you so much for your great support. And finally, thanks a lot to all our participants. Let us stay in touch and let us move FP&A to the next level. we're always looking for interesting case studies and thought leadership. So if you have something in mind, if you have this experience, you know how to find us at FP&A Trends. And finally, let us stay connected. When we close this webinar, you will have opportunity to participate in survey and to answer the questions how we can improve this webinar. Thank you all. Thank you so much, our panelists. All the best, Vignesh. All the best,
Thank you.
Mark.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Larissa.
See you very
Thank you.
soon. Hopefully see you face to face.